Hello, Leela Viss here. I'm doing something a little bit different and going on a Facebook live stream to communicate a few things. One of them being the answer to a question that I receive a lot. How do I get youngsters or new people who have never created before on the piano to explore their imaginations? And I feel like I have a recipe, and I've been using one recipe in particular during this fall season, and that is called Twinkle with a Twist. But I haven't been using this quite yet because I'm doing Twinkle Treat first. Now, Twinkle with a Twist came out in 2018, and I'll explain that in just a minute. But I'm now using a prequel to that, is what I call it. And what it is a lead sheet. So nothing so terribly new or different, but I think why my students are liking this so much is instead of me having them play through their 5-finger patterns or their scales or their chords, I'm having them take Twinkle and transpose it to every single key. Now, that's not so hard. Basically, it's just learning the tune. And I like them to try it out by ear if they can, first of all, but I do have the tune all written out. And then I give them some basic chords, like the root chord or the tonic chord. I'll move this just a little bit so you can see my hands. The 4 chord, back to the 1, and the 5-7. Those standard chords that most likely you are teaching in your studio right now. I do make a big deal about what the root is of each one. The root of the F chord is F. The C chord, of course, is on the bottom, and that G7. It's so hard to explain what that 7 means. So I don't necessarily right away, but I do call it by its name, or I call it by the word dominant. And then what I want them to do, I've got space for them, if I can show this. There's little question marks. Okay, what chords are you going to fill in there? So now they start using their ear, what sounds good, and now they start using their knowledge of chords as well. Well, a C chord has a G in it, it has an E in it, so I could start with my C chord right here. There's F, I'll use the F chord, then back to the E, and then D. So they gradually decide on all the chords that they're going to use to harmonize this melody. And then I say, oh, well, once you got it in C, let's move it to G. And so the transposition activity begins. But I thought, you know what? They'll probably get just a little bit maybe bored with that after a while, although I'm surprised at how many students are liking just transposing this tune. They're enjoying it. But what I've done now is I've given them some choices in left-hand patterns, and I gave them names so they know exactly what they're doing and in what key. And I have this little chart here for us to keep track of. So I'll give you some examples. So as written would be the blocked chords. I've got pulsing shells. Doing the outside of the chords in the left hand. So I explain what shells mean. Maybe the drum bass. So a little bit different rhythm in the left hand. The oompa bass. And then of course the Alberti bass. Everybody loves that one. I've got a power chord. I've got extended power chords. Rocking bass. Just a lot of fun, different patterns that they're going to run into in their music anyway. But we give them a name, and we just keep track of everything that they're doing. I also give some suggestions on how they could change up the right hand. Maybe the right hand could be up an octave. Or maybe it's down. Or maybe they add repeated notes. And then maybe the left hand could play the chord or the melody. So it just kind of goes back and forth, and what I like is that they stumble across a new idea. I never say, no, that's not what I wrote. I love it when they come up with their own pattern. It's just a pathway for them to follow, and I call it a recipe with creative decisions along the way. Now, this is called a prequel, this Twinkle Treat. And for those of you who are watching, thanks for joining me. I'm talking about Twinkle Treat, and that's a prequel to Twinkle with a Twist. Now, don't say those 3 times in a row because they're not easy to say. And now I want to get into the twist part. Now, most of our students like to play, not all of them, but many of them like to play Halloween pieces. And so I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun for them to be able to get under the hood of what creates a quirky or a spooky or a scary sound? And they're going to learn a lot of theory along the way as well. So now I've got another lead sheet here, and in this Twinkle with a Twist, think of it as a catalog. I give them 24 different ideas on how they could put their own twist on Twinkle. Now, for some, it may be easy for them to just turn it into minor and call it good. And listen, this involves quite a bit of technical. You have to be pretty, I don't know, maybe an elementary player, a late elementary player to do some of these things. So what I suggest for anybody who has beginners, let them at least explore the right hand or just the left hand only, and then make duets with them. And so if they just get to play Twinkle in minor, that's a pretty big step for some people. There's also something that I think is really fun with beginners, and that is just to add, I call them alien black notes. Here's our melody. Okay, well now instead of playing all the normal keys, substitute a black key. And then you get a creepy twinkle right away. And then I've got lots of different ideas for the left hand. So you could use the walking bass. It gives it kind of a mysterious sound. Another idea. I call that the creeping thumb bass. It's going up and down. So has a little bit of a dire sound to it maybe. And then one of my favorites is to change up the meter and do an bass. C minor scale, some of those alien black keys. So a lot of this is a mixture of all of them. And then, okay, we got the Addams family, right? So I include that in here, and then you could add some repeated notes. And then we all like In the Hall of the Mountain King. So notice I'm just kind of echoing. I'm grabbing some of the patterns that are used in some of these well-known scary pieces, and then students can apply them to their own original Twinkle with a Twist. Here's another one. Ooh, using chords out of the key. Okay, just some new ways. So suddenly students are allowed to, or pianists, maybe you want to try it, are allowed to break the rules just a little bit from what they normally do when they harmonize the melody. Okay, the rocking bass, always fun. And then I think this is one of my favorite tricks. I call it the melting witch fourths. So augmented fourths or diminished fifths, whatever you want to call it, but it has that scary name or that scary sound to it. Okay, and then it's always fun to end on not just a minor chord, but it's fun to introduce students to some seventh chords, even if they don't know everything about it. Okay, just add one more third stacked on top of a triad, and you get a seventh chord, and then you can have fun rearranging or modifying them, and you do a little tremolo and a little button ending, something like that. So there's a lot of different things in this catalog that can help students really develop a lot of creative skills, but they're still on the page, but they're getting invited to move off of it as well. So that is something that I like to do to help pianists, to help musicians move away from the page. I tend to use what they know already and then give them some tools that they can explore to create their own ideas. So one of the things that I've been doing this fall, which I didn't even really think that this would be so impactful, but every time someone has a Twinkle transposed and ready to send to me or to play, then I have them just send it to me in Tonara. So that way they don't have to practice it anymore. I hear it and we can just move on to something new in the lesson. And so every time they send me a recording, they get to put their name in this jar along with a guess about how many watermelon Sour Patch gummies are in the jar. So I'm doing this until the end of September. I'm going to start something new in October. And this is all something to do with the Rate Your Practice. That's from one of my key idea episodes. And this has been really effective in my studio as well. So I'll put a link to that podcast in case you're interested in that. So I'll end with a couple of things. First of all, I think now that I've been asked enough times, I think I know that my answer to your question about how do I get students, pianists, people who have never been creative before to get creative, to explore their own creativity. I go with what they know, like an easy tune. I give them some opportunities and then they make creative choices along the way. So it is their creativity stirring up, and then I think accidentally they run into new things and then it becomes theirs. And so it's that process of starting with something that is known and then going to the unknown, going to the original. So I do this, and I think it's important for them to have the tools. And part of those tools is the theory behind it, knowing their theory. And the basic of all theory that I think everyone should know, the fundamental basic knowledge that everybody should know, is chords. And so I just recently wrote a course as a digital course called The Full Scoop on Chords, and it takes you through triads and their qualities to seventh chords and their chord symbols. It is very thorough. And then I also like for students to borrow chord progressions and explore them, and so that's what my 321 challenge is all about. That's another resource beyond this Twinkle with a Twist. And then when I want students to compose, I follow a cookie cutter composing type format, and that's another resource. So those are the things that I'm using. Those are the tools that I'm using to get my students to be creative, lock into their creative voice. And then one other thing that I'm offering for teachers, and I've done it with high school students, is called a Composium. And the Composium is where 8 teachers get together and they compose 8 bars at a time. And it's a very interactive workshop environment where we learn, we develop, we work on giving each other what I call feed forward, so they can move forward in the process. They learn how to notate things, their piece in Noteflight, and how to create a cover in Canva, so they got it packaged up well. So those are the things that I'm offering to help you and your students to move away from the page and enjoy their own creative voice. So before I leave, I was having fun coming up with, what if I don't feel like being, I don't really feel like being spooky or creepy, but maybe I want to feel like a little sad, or just make a beautiful minor ballad out of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So I was listening to my favorite melodies playlist on Spotify, and I was inspired by one called Ordinary World. And so I'm borrowing that chord progression. I don't know if any of you will recognize that or not. And I call it Twinkle with a Triste, which I don't know my French very well. I think it's French, maybe Spanish, but it means sad. Okay, so twinkle with a little sadness. So let's see if I can remember it here. I'll move this so you can kind of see my hands. It sounds like this. So see once if any of you can recognize that chord progression. So that's another thing I like to do: smash a tune with a chord progression and see what comes of it. So I hope this is helpful, and if it is, please let me know in the comments, and I will add in all of the links to the Twinkle resources. Again, this comes all in one package. The Twinkle prequel comes with a Twinkle with a Twist. So yes, I've bundled those together because I think the first one, the Twinkle Treat, really is a prequel. It primes your students to get more creative and put a spooky or creative or sad twist on the tune as well. And then the 321 challenge, the full scoop on chords, and the Composium are all resources for you to help you and your students find your creative voice. So thank you so much. And if you found this helpful, please share the video. I appreciate that. And I have students that are doing this right now, or they will be, but I also have students who have done this in the past, so I'll share some of those videos on my page so that you can see them in action. Yes, this really does work. It's not just working for Miss Leela. It can work for you and your students. So thank you so much, and stay in touch. You can find me at leelavis.com. Make sure to sign up for my weekly newsletter too, because then if you ever have a question, I'm happy to answer that through the newsletter, or you can just get in touch with me, and I'm happy to chat. All right. Have a good day, and I hope you enjoy this fall season and have some fun putting a twist on some of your music, and perhaps even get creative and create a whole new piece all on your own. All right, take care.